Let's talk about partial fractions from an examination standpoint and the overall strategy. Whenever we try to prepare for the syllabus, how should we think about it strategically? Whether you want to score or you want to pass your exam, or your goal is something different. So let's understand about that. And this we're talking about the Maharashtra State Board syllabus. Paper code is 22103. First year basic mathematics I scheme. So let's understand what's going on here. Okay. So if you see, this is the whole syllabus for the whole of semester 1 maths. And if you see the relative weightage, I've arranged the weightages and the chapters in the descending order, whichever is the highest, I put it here. And partial fractions comes at the bottom two, just before logarithmic. So it comes for 8 marks. So in terms of relative importance, it's not that important in terms of weightages as compared to the chapter for a 70 mark theory pattern. I'm talking about the theory pattern over here. And if you see, so if you just the weightage is overall 8 marks. So that means, let's say for some reason, if you are short of time in preparing, or you don't want to prepare the whole syllabus, or your goal is not to conquer the world, your goal is just to clear the exam, or just be smart enough to study and use your time in the last minute, so that you focus on a few things than trying to cover up everything because you're not prepared or you don't have time. So in such a scenario, partial fractions as a chapter can be definitely skipped altogether. So you can just take your risk on this 8 marks and then cover up in the other marks. So you're not risking your marks as such. So you're just risking your weightage on this chapter, because still you can make up in other chapters, at least the first 3 chapters or 4 chapters, right? And the thing is, if you see the partial fractions, there are only 2 questions that you're going to get of 4 mark each, and we'll see example paper. But if you're going to skip this chapter altogether for the 8 marks, then the options these questions come, they are heavy on matrices and determinants and trigonometry. That means the top 2 chapters, then you'll have to be thorough with that to afford to skip this chapter. And if you see, let me show you a sample paper. I think I had somewhere here. Okay, this is a sample paper here. So I've just pulled up a sample paper. I think this is a summer 2019 paper. You can put up the winter also. It doesn't matter. The pattern is the same. So if you see here where the partial fractions appears, there is none on question number 1. On question number 2, it appears in question number 2C. The funny part is every time it appears as the same question number 2C, it's always the same for 4 marks. So it appears for that. So this is the first instance. And if you see the options here, this is matrices and determinants. It's technically determinants, but we can assume matrices and determinants together. So this is the matrices and determinants problem. This is the matrices and determinants problem. And this is, I think, the mensuration problem. So let's say, even if you skip this chapter for the time being, and if you want to address partials, so you have to attempt 3. So at least the 2 questions will be on matrices and determinants. Even if you want to take a risk on partial fractions, and whether you're prepared mensuration or not, we'll see when we see it holistically. But let's say assume that you're prepared mensuration, because mensuration has more weightage than the partial fraction that we saw. So assume that you're prepared mensuration to take the advantage of the weightage, then you can comfortably skip over here. Okay, but the weightages of the other chapters where this is paired in the overall question 2 section, matrices and determinants have a bigger component. And the second place where it appears is question number 4B in every paper over here. Okay, just one problem again for 4 marks. And again, if you see the options, you have to attempt any 3 out of the 5 this time. So you can afford to lose 2. I think earlier over here it was attempt 3 out of the 4. So you had lesser choices. So over here it's attempt 3 out of the 5, A, B, C, D, E. And let's say if you're trying to skip partial fractions altogether and not study for that, so if you're preparing for matrices and determinants, this is the matrices and determinants problem. Okay, this is the trig problem, this is a trig problem, trigonometry problem, and this is a trig problem. Okay, so you got 3 trigonometry problems and 1 matrices and determinants, and within that you have in the mix you have partial fractions. So if you skip this, but if you are trying to be covering up syllabus on matrices and determinants and trigonometry, so you can comfortably see the partial fractions you can do away with without preparing or even skipping the whole chapter as it is. So that's the importance of this weightage. Okay, but nevertheless, regardless of how you think about it, we'll talk about partial fractions in detail, and we'll talk about some of the problems that we have in partial fractions. There are typically, if you see all the papers, I pasted it here, and I've extracted all the questions related to only partial fractions starting from winter 29, dating back all the way before the syllabus got changed till 2017 winter. And if you see all these problems, the whole partial fractions, should you decide to study, the whole partial fractions can be structured or divided into just 4 types of problems. So all the whole section, the 2 problems per paper, will fall within these 4 types. And in the next set of videos, we'll be just covering these 4 types. And based on that, you can pick up. If it's easy for you, you can attempt and then figure out whether you want to. Let's say you choose to prepare for partial fractions and also matrices and determinants and trigonometry. Then you can decide based on the problem, whichever is easy and very time friendly, you can choose that. But for some reason, if you don't have time, if you're you're going to skip the whole chapter of partial fractions altogether and not study and completely just let go of this weightage of 8 marks and caught up in the other topics, that also should be completely fine. So it's up to you how you want to strategize. Whenever I put the videos and whenever I discuss further in specific, maybe I'll try to personalize the strategy for each person on how they should think about it. So I'll see you in the next video.